It really was an incredible final drive, and it underscores inexcusable. 2:16 left. Steelers out of timeouts. Vikings up by 8. Steelers 96 yards to go. And they did, but for Pat Freiermuth not holding on to the ball at the end of the game. They marched the ball down the field, and it was so predictable, and it was exciting. And as a fan of football, it's like, this is great. Let's go. Let's have overtime. This is great. You want a game like that where you think, oh, why am I watching this too? Wow, oh, hey, this is, you want it to keep going, and the momentum was behind the Steelers. And the one thing that we can point to, well, two things by one player. Now, the stupid penalty on Chase Claypool early in the game ultimately didn't matter because it was all part of just that collection of crap from the Steelers, but it did get Chase Claypool benched for a while by Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin after the game said, we'll see if Claypool got the message. Well, he clearly didn't get the message because, and I'm still astonished that a guy who's got nearly 2 seasons of NFL experience would do this, would not understand the situation. 38 seconds on a ticking clock after he makes a key 4th down catch to extend the drive. Instead of doing what we saw Larry Fitzgerald do a couple of times last year, sprint to the middle of the field, put the ball down, and go get in position. He's celebrating. Here comes a teammate, and Chase Claypool's like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Why are you preventing me from, enjoying myself here? And then the ball gets knocked away. Pat Freiermuth has to go get it. Claypool was almost lined up offside. He's mad at his teammate for taking the ball from him. I don't know what's he mad about. 14 seconds went off the clock between the time that he caught the ball and the time that they snapped the ball. 14 seconds. Now, I don't know how much time they would have needed to get in position to snap it, but not 14 because we saw it right there. I mean, can we play that again? It's amazing to watch this. The levels of, I don't know that it's stupidity, it's lack of awareness, it's immaturity. Coaching comes into this at some point. How do you let your guys, Charean, do this? What a key moment. And they're still 35 yards from the end zone. And there's 38, and there it goes, and celebrate. And give me the ball, idiot. We got to get going. And he's like, what are you talking about? Pat Freiermuth goes, oh, here it is over here. Hey, come on, let's go. And watch, look at Claypool's right foot. He's almost lined up offside, and then he's mad afterward. I'm astounded by this, and it reminds me of an item that was on the Steelers website back in March where Chase Claypool's Diva Quotient was mentioned. And again, this is Steelers.com. So this is somebody who's in the know about how the team feels about this guy. And I was like, hey, we haven't seen it. Come on, let's not, just because he's a young receiver who's done well and he's kind of flashy, come on, let's give the kid a break. Well, we saw tonight what whoever had seen last year was worried about. And it's there, and they haven't managed to iron it out. If anything, it's only gotten worse.
Well, yeah, and he explained after the game, Mike, that he was mad at Trey Turner, who was trying to get the ball and set it in place because he blamed Trey Turner for knocking the ball away. The ball got knocked away, which cost them more time to go pick up the ball and bring it back and put it back. It wasn't Trey Turner's fault. Trey Turner's trying to get the ball and get the thing lined up because he's acting like an idiot. And he has 8 penalties this season. No other receiver in the league has more than 5. He does everything possible that wrong. He missed a block on a 3rd and 1. Najee Harris gets tackled in the backfield. And then he makes 2 spectacular catches. I think it just kind of sums up the good and the bad of Chase Claypool. He makes some outstanding catches, had a really good night, almost 100 yards, and yet he actually probably cost them the game, at least another opportunity or maybe 2 opportunities at the end zone that they didn't have there at the end. And I guarantee you the Steelers practice situational awareness. They do that all the time. I guarantee you they do that. And yet he had none on the field. And this goes back to, hey, these are kind of how the Steelers receivers apparently operate. You go back to AB doing some of the things he did there, and now you have Chase Claypool doing some of the same things that AB did while he was in Pittsburgh.
But here's the difference between the two, and I'm glad you mentioned Antonio Brown. We didn't know about the AB stuff until it really hit the fan in his last year. And then you start hearing all the stuff that Mike Tomlin has dealt with. And this is one of the reasons why Mike Tomlin's a great coach, and anyone in Pittsburgh who doubts it needs to really ask themselves how much they understand about football. Tomlin is a guy who is able, for the most part, we're not seeing it with Chase Claypool, but he's done it with Antonio Brown, and he's done it with others, where he gets them to behave. He gets them to listen to their better angels, and then they go somewhere else, and it all falls apart. Yeah. And I think what makes it so stunning is plenty of other guys who have had these tendencies to maybe not do things that are in the best interest of the team, they've still managed to comply when it mattered. You wouldn't have seen Antonio Brown do what Chase Claypool did last night. For all his flaws, for all his faults, for all his issues, you would have never seen him do what Chase Claypool did last night, which tells me they're dealing with something behind the curtain here. They got an issue with Chase Claypool, and they got to ask themselves, is it worth it? Is the few plays per game that we get out of the guy, which make him look like a young Randy Moss, frankly. He looks more like a young Randy Moss than Justin Jefferson does when he's performing at his highest level. On the other hand, you got to deal with the Diva Quotient, as Steelers.com called it. Here's Claypool after the game talking about that moment that did cost the Steelers at least one, if not two, shots at the end zone.
Definitely got to be better. I got tackled near the hash, did my little first down point, and went to hand the ball to the ref. He had just got there.
Right.
So even if I got right up and looked for him, he just wasn't there. So he ran down the field to come get the ball. The ball got knocked out of my hands. That's what cost us time. But I definitely do have to be better. I knew the situation. I know I'm near the hash. I know the ball's placed on the hash. But
yeah, you do have to be better. You have to be more aware of what actually happened and to understand that your words don't match what we saw. And I'm a Chase Claypool fan. Phil Simms, isn't that funny? I've heard him referred to as Phil so many times lately, I called him Phil. Chris Simms, not Phil. Sorry, Chris. Not that Chris is up. Chris Simms saw Claypool at Notre Dame back when Chris was part of the Notre Dame team at NBC, and he was raving about the guy. And going into 2020, his rookie season, this guy's going to be great. This guy's going to be great. I've been on board with it. I talked to him after one of his big games as a rookie. He was doing great things. But there's something going on there that Mike Tomlin's got to get control of. And if Mike Tomlin can't get control of it, nobody can get control of it. So that's very disappointing and disconcerting. And it didn't come up during Mike Tomlin's post-game press conference. The only thing that came up was the question about him being benched for a while after the stupid penalty in the first half. That's it. And here it is here. Now, look, I thought this was going to be offsetting fouls because Bashaud Breeland was guilty of there's a little bump there, maybe a taunt, there's a finger in the face, there's a shove. I thought that should have been offsetting fouls, and I was surprised Claypool was the only one who was penalized there. But Claypool brought it on himself by sticking a finger in a guy's face. It used to be the guy who retaliated was the only one who got penalized. But see, Breeland shouldn't have done what he did there. That's the kind of thing that should get you in a little hot water, especially with this emphasis on taunting. But Claypool was at fault too, and that got him benched for a while. And Mike Tomlin was asked about it. Did he get the message? We'll see. And, I don't know. Charean, you understand these mechanics better than I do. The media walk down where you got to go from the press box down to talk, if you want to be available to talk to the coaches or whatever. I don't know when they leave to head down there, but it's possible that it hadn't really registered what Claypool had done at the end of the game when they were talking to Mike Tomlin.
Oh, very possible, Mike. And, some probably left early and some probably left as the game ends. But either way, they're trying to write stories on deadline and have their heads down and all those sorts of things. So that is very possible that happened. But Mike, he's got to be better, and I don't know how you get through to him if he's not better in situational awareness than that right there. Then I don't know how you teach a guy to change. But it's something that they have to figure out, as you said, whether he's worth it or not. At some point, guys just aren't worth the effort. They cost you too much. It costs you too much time and effort. He's very, very talented, but he's got to figure this out. There have been a lot of diva receivers in this league. There are still a lot of diva receivers in this league, but you can't do that in that situation. And you see, compare it to how the Vikings handled Chris Boyd when he had his situation on the field, which frankly, again, if the Vikings lose that game, we're probably talking about how huge of a penalty that was by Chris Boyd, but how the Steelers handled during that game. And I know you can't do it with the clock ticking, but after that play, you can get Chase Claypool and pull him to the side and say, you got to have better situational awareness here. We're going to talk about this after the game, but get your head back in this game. The clock is running. We've only got a set number of plays left. Get back in this game.
And we showed the Chris Boyd taunt, and that's exactly what the players have been told repeatedly the league doesn't want them to do. Whether we like it or not, whether we think it goes too far or not, everyone's on notice. We're at week 14. I remember going into the season, people were saying, we'll see the uptick for a few weeks and everybody will figure out how to adjust their behavior accordingly. And we're still seeing these fouls. And it bothers me because we're seeing them not called. The consistency still isn't there. But that one, when you're hovering over the opponent, looking down at him, that's the exact behavior that the league has said to stop. Whether we like it or not, everybody understands by now. Now, as it relates to Claypool, one way to get him to do what's expected is to have a field general of a quarterback, a guy who imposes accountability on himself and everyone around him, a guy who sets an example that is so great that it inspires other teammates to always do the right thing at all times. A Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning, and apparently not a Ben Roethlisberger. Here he is talking about Claypool.
It's not really my job. I mean, to me, that goes up to Coach Tomlin. That's what he needs to do. That's his job as the head coach. It's not as the quarterback. It's my job to help manage what we do on the field and getting first downs and trying to score, dealing with player issues and whatever else you want to say. That's the coach's job, not mine.
Now, look, I got a couple of things to say here. I think one of the reasons Ben Roethlisberger is reluctant to deal with player issues, earlier in his career, he was the player issue, okay? Yeah. So maybe there's a certain amount of hypocrisy that's baked into this. Like, I kind of raised some hell and caused some problems in all sorts of ways back when I was young and stupid, frankly, he was. And it's just because time has passed and he hasn't behaved that way anymore doesn't mean it didn't happen. But also, secondly, what the hell are you doing? You're 39 years old. You're the clear and undisputed leader of the team. Of course it's your job. That's part of what being a quarterback is. That's why I will make the case until I take my final breath that there is relevance to quarterback wins. It's not a stat as objective as completion percentage, but you are the coach on the field. You are the one who scares your teammates into doing the right thing, because if they don't, they have to deal with you. That's why Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl rings. That's why Peyton Manning was as great as he was. That's why other quarterbacks are great, not just because of what they do with the football. They have the personality and the leadership and the willingness to use it that keeps guys in line. And Ben, he's not, hey, at least he's honest about it. He's not even trying, Charean.
I had 2 thoughts when I saw that, Mike. The first one is, I thought immediately, this guy's checked out. He knows this is his last season. He doesn't have to deal with this joker for very much longer. He is out of there. It's somebody else's problem. And that's exactly what he did. He put it on Mike Tomlin. My second thought was, is he taking a shot at Mike Tomlin here? And I'm not so sure he wasn't taking a shot at Mike Tomlin there, Mike.
You know, it's a good point because, again, with Antonio Brown, none of the stuff that happened behind the scenes played out publicly until that practice after Antonio Brown found out Juju Smith-Schuster was the team MVP, and the Steelers, they have a weird blind spot for that. They announced the team MVP before the regular season ends, and I remember when that happened a few years ago, I heard from coaches who said, why? You gain nothing by doing that. You wait till the season's over because there's always a chance. These guys have egos. They're competitive. They're always looking at what everybody else is doing on the team, who's getting the credit, who's getting the blame, who's getting the football thrown his way. it's a very, very weird, unforced error by the Steelers, but that was when we first became fully aware. Now, it was kind of building to that. We had seen some behaviors from Antonio Brown that were making people say something's strange here, but it was all that year. The years before that, Antonio Brown was being Antonio Brown behind the scenes, and Tomlin was keeping it from coming out on the field. And, yeah, Charean, your instinct may be right here. What in the world are we doing with this guy? And now, it's still on Roethlisberger to try. It's still on Roethlisberger to lead. And I don't think that – and I agree with you that he has checked out and he knows he's just kind of playing out the string here, but I don't think that he's decided to stop being a leader. I think this is an indication that the guy just never was and doesn't get it. And I remember when Emmanuel Sanders went from Pittsburgh to Denver. Remember when Sanders was like, what? The difference between Peyton Manning and Ben Roethlisberger, are you kidding me? You know, has me over to his house, spends time with me, talks to me. Because that's the thing. You don't just show up and kick the door in and say, all right, here I am to kick some ass and take some names. You got to cultivate the relationship with the person. You have to make them like you. You have to make them want to do well for you. That's part of leadership. It's not just issuing orders. It's having the right relationship with the people that you are leading so they will follow when you set the example. So they got a problem with Claypool, and they got a problem with Roethlisberger. They got a lot of problems. But fundamentally, they're in good hands with Mike Tomlin. But there are some things that need to be addressed if they want to try to turn this thing around. And, you know, the Vikings, I think, would have been done if they had lost that game and fallen to 5-8. They'd have been cooked. The Steelers still aren't. They're still not, I don't think, completely cooked. But it definitely gets a lot harder when they took that loss last night.
Yeah, and Mike, I'll take issue with one thing you said, the quarterback's job to be liked. I don't think a quarterback has to be liked because I know for a fact Peyton Manning wasn't liked by a lot of teammates. His job is to be respected, and his job is to uphold them to his standard on the field. And Peyton Manning always did that. And that's a great example of somebody who did it throughout his career, and Tom Brady too. And perhaps Tom Brady isn't liked by a lot of his teammates. I don't know, but I do know that Peyton Manning wasn't always liked by his teammates. But boy, they respected him. They wanted to play for him. They didn't want to hear from him. They wanted to do right by him. All those things. And I don't see that with Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers. And frankly, I haven't seen that from Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers throughout his entire career. Even when they were winning Super Bowls, I don't think he was that guy.
Well, and it's an interesting point you make because I think it is possible to be liked and feared. I think it's possible. That, and even if you don't like the guy, he's available to you. He's talking to you. He's saying to you, let's get together and throw footballs. Let's get together and go over film. And you're kind of thinking, I really don't want to deal with this guy tonight, but okay. And Peyton Manning has a likable personality. Now, that's what we see publicly. And one thing that we definitely learn covering football, how someone presents themselves in front of a microphone is very different from what you're going to get behind the scenes. We see that all the time. And Peyton Manning, I have a feeling, is not the affable, folksy, charming guy all the time. And you are going to get pissed off Peyton from time to time. And that may make him unlikable to his teammates, but you need to have that relationship. You don't have to like me, you just have to work with me, but you're going to work with me. I'm not going to ignore you, and I'm not going to just make demands of you without making sure you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And you may not want to hear it, but I'm going to tell you why I'm doing it. Sorry, but that's just the way it's going to be. That's kind of the way I'm coming at it from, reaching out and having a relationship, reaching out and spending time, even if it wears them down. Because that's the thing. If you are going to have that no, I don't want to say dictatorial approach, but if you're going to be the sheriff, you can't just show up in the big moments as the sheriff. You got to be the sheriff all the time.
Yeah, even in the hard times, even when you don't want to do it, all that, Mike, you've got to be there and you've got to be that leader. And when I was watching Chase Claypool, I was thinking, would this happen with a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning? And I just don't think it would have happened because they would have prepared. That receiver would not have wanted to hear from that quarterback after that game. He would have chewed them out, just like Anthony Barr, I think it was, chewed out Chris Boyd during the game. And I realize, you can't do it in the game, but at some point that clicks in the receiver's head. I don't want to deal with this quarterback after the game. I'm going to get this ball back and do what I have to do. I'm not going to celebrate my 9-yard first down catch. I'm going to get this ball back and move on to the next play. And so I do think it's part of Ben Roethlisberger's responsibility, whether he wants it or not. As the leader, as the quarterback, you are the leader of that team, not just the offense. You're the leader of that team. And I just thought that was a lack of leadership last night in his post-game press conference, and frankly during the game. After they spiked the ball, he could have gotten in Chase Claypool's face.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.